Hey guys. Tonight we're traveling back, way back, to the kind of winter that makes your bones ache just from imagining it. No cozy heaters, no electric blankets, not even a proper roof in some cases. Just you, the biting wind, and a desperate hope that your fire doesn't go out before dawn. We're talking about how people managed to sleep during the harsh winters in the wilderness, long before thermostats and thermal socks existed. Trust me, if you were out there, you wouldn't last a night. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? And what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The wind moans across a frozen plain. You pull your fur hood tighter. Even though this is just your imagination, and still, you can almost feel that prehistoric cold biting at your cheeks. The year doesn't matter. It could be 10.000 BCE or just a particularly bad camping trip gone wrong. Out here, winter is not a season, it's a predator. You picture yourself as one of the early humans trudging through the snow, dragging a crude hide shelter, maybe following a herd that long since vanished into the white horizon. Night is coming. And that means you need warmth. But warmth, in this age, is relative. You scrape together sticks, strike flint on stone, and pray the tiny spark doesn't die in the wind. That flicker, that fragile orange glow, isn't just a fire. It's your heartbeat outside your body. When the flames finally catch, the relief is almost holy. You huddle close, the smoke biting your eyes. But you don't care. Fire is life, and everything else can freeze. Early people didn't sleep the way you do. They drifted in and out of shallow dozes, ears tuned to the forest, the wind, and the distant crunch of snow that might mean something's hunting you. Deep sleep was a luxury reserved for those who had enough bodies around them to keep watch. If you were lucky or smart, you'd find a natural cave. The air inside would be damp but still warmer than the open air. You'd crawl in, cover the entrance with hides or branches, and hope no one, or nothing, claimed this spot before you. Archaeologists have found remnants of such winter shelters, blackened with soot, lined with animal bones and ashes. Imagine the smell: smoke, fat, sweat, and fear, a fragrance that meant survival. Some tribes slept on piles of leaves covered with animal skins. Others dug shallow pits in the ground and filled them with heated stones. Then covered the stones with furs. Primitive, yes, but genius in its simplicity. The earth's warmth, trapped under your blanket, was nature's first electric mattress. If you roll over too far, though, you might singe your fur, or worse, set your bedding on fire. History doesn't record those nights, but you can guess how they ended. And then there were the sounds, the soundtrack of survival. Wolves howling in the distance, trees cracking under frost, rivers moaning beneath their icy crusts. You'd think sleep would be impossible. But exhaustion has a way of winning. You'd curl up, knees to chest, surrounded by family or fellow wanderers, and drift into a half-sleep filled with dreams of warmth and sunlight. Humor probably helped. Even prehistoric people must have had that one friend who said, "It's not that cold," right before turning blue. Or someone who bragged about being a great hunter but ended up burning their fur blanket trying to keep the fire alive. Human foolishness is timeless. It's part of why we survived at all. There's an unspoken beauty in imagining this. The first beds of humanity being nothing more than earth and courage. The wilderness didn't care if you were clever or clumsy, it only respected resilience. And as your eyelids grew heavy beside that crackling fire, you'd realize that sleep wasn't just rest, it was surrender. You trusted the world, for a few precious hours, not to kill you. Some historians still debate whether early humans even slept through the entire night during harsh winters. Many believe they practiced what's now called segmented sleep, dozing for a few hours, waking to tend the fire, then sleeping again. It wasn't a full 8 hours of bliss. It was a constant dance between warmth and frostbite, between light and dark. And somehow, that rhythm carried us forward through millennia. As the fire dims and the night deepens, your senses sharpen. You hear snowflakes settling on your shelter's roof, soft as whispers. You feel your heartbeat slowing to match the earth's quiet pulse. Somewhere out there, another group of wanderers does the same, across time, across continents. Maybe that's the strangest comfort of all. No one ever truly sleeps alone in winter. Not really. You shift closer to the fading fire. The smoke swirls above like a ghostly lullaby. Your breath mingles with it, turns to mist, and disappears into the night. And as your eyes finally close, the wilderness exhales, gentle, ancient, endless. The fire crackles, and now the story deepens. You're still there, huddled under animal hides, breathing smoke and snow in equal measure, but something's changed. The flames no longer feel like a fragile accident of nature. They feel intentional, sacred, alive. You watch how the sparks leap into the black sky, how the shadows dance across the cave wall. And you realize, this isn't just survival anymore. It's the beginning of comfort. You move your hands toward the glow. Palms open, the warmth spreads up your arms, seeping into your bones. You think of how strange it is that humans, of all creatures, fell in love with fire, not just for cooking or scaring off predators, but because of how it made the night bearable. You can't sleep without staring into it a while. Can you? The fire becomes the heartbeat of the camp, the night's only lamp. People must have gathered around flames for tens of thousands of winters. They didn't just warm their hands, they told stories, whispered prayers, and watched the light flicker like a god that could vanish any second. You imagine one of them, an ancestor whose name you'll never know, feeding the fire with careful hands. That person wasn't just making heat, they were keeping hope alive. Somewhere in that dance of shadow and flame, humanity discovered what safety felt like. For the first time, sleep became something gentle instead of dangerous. The wilderness outside might still howl, but inside the ring of light, you could let your guard down, just a little. Still, the ritual was demanding. Fires needed tending through the night, and someone always had to stay awake. The most trusted or unlucky person, depends on your perspective, would sit up, poking the embers, feeding the wood, keeping the chill at bay. Their eyelids would droop, their mind drifting between wake and dream. It's strange, isn't it? Even the guardians of warmth must have fantasized about the very thing they were protecting, the luxury of sleep. When the flames burned low, the room, or the cave, would flicker between worlds. The light painted strange shapes on the walls, turning soot into moving creatures. Faces. Spirits. It's easy to imagine how myths were born from those glowing moments. Maybe someone once saw a dancing shadow and decided it was the soul of a loved one visiting. Maybe a spark leapt too high, and they thought it was a star falling to earth. And so the fire wasn't just heat, it was imagination. It was the first storyteller. Long before words were carved into stone or inked on parchment, the flames told their tales in light and motion. You can almost hear it whisper now. In the hush between crackles, stay awake. Stay alive. Remember me. If you've ever sat beside a campfire and felt your thoughts slow down, your heartbeat sinking with the soft pop of burning wood, then you've touched that same ancient rhythm. It's universal. Every winter, every continent, humans curled near the fire and watched their fears shrink with every glowing ember. Of course, things didn't always go as planned. Fires smoked too much, filled shelters with choking fumes. Or worse, they escaped their pits, devouring the very hides meant to protect you. There must have been moments of panic, someone waking to find their bedding smoldering, their friends shouting, "Don't breathe in, just roll out." Human innovation has always been a bit trial and error. Yet despite the danger, no one gave up the fire. They learned to build better pits, to hang meat or hides above it to dry, to make use of every spark. Some early communities even buried hot coals in ash before sleeping, preserving warmth for the morning. It was the prehistoric equivalent of setting your thermostat before bed. There's something poetic about it. Humans learning not just to control nature, but to coax comfort from it. The act of sleeping beside fire became a symbol of trust. Trust in your own hands, in your tribe, and in that flickering companion that could as easily kill you as keep you alive. Some historians still debate exactly when the relationship with fire turned from practical to spiritual. Was it 400,000 years ago? A million? The truth is lost in ash and memory. But the evidence is clear. By the time winter came, and the winds howled through the wilderness, people already saw fire as more than a tool. It was a friend, a protector, maybe even a lover, in the way it embraced you with warmth when everything else turned cold. You lean closer in your imagination now. The firelight paints your hands gold. The shadows on the cave walls shift like ancient dancers. For a moment, you understand what those early people must have felt, the pulse of existence. The wild beauty of not just surviving the cold, but finding peace in it. Someone beside you laughs softly, maybe telling a joke about how their toes are frozen, but at least the mammoth meat didn't spoil. Even in the harshest times, humor burned as bright as the flames. It had to. Without laughter, the cold might have won. The night deepens. You yawn, your eyelids heavy. Outside, the wind still howls like a wolf. Inside, the fire hums low and steady, its rhythm matching your breath. One last spark leaps upward, as if saluting the stars before fading into the smoke. And just like that, the world goes quiet again. You settle down beside the embers, wrapped in warmth and ancient comfort. Humanity's oldest lullaby hums in your ears, the crackle of survival. The sigh of flame. The fire fades to embers. And now something stirs beside you, soft, heavy breathing, the faint rustle of fur. You turn your head, and in the dim glow you see two golden eyes watching back. Not human eyes, wolf eyes. It's hard to tell if they look at you with hunger or understanding. But you stay still, because deep down, you know this isn't a story about predators and prey. It's about the moment the wilderness itself decided to lie down beside you. Tonight's warmth isn't coming from fire alone. It's coming from the animals that once kept their distance, until winter forced everyone to share the same shivering dream. You imagine yourself, wrapped in hide, lying in a shallow shelter dug from the snow. The fire burns low, but on the other side of the flame, a wolf curls up, not attacking, not snarling, just resting. Maybe it's the smell of cooked meat that drew it close. Maybe it's the warmth, but as the wind howls outside, you both understand the same rule. Enemies can wait until spring. It's strange to think that our oldest friendship began like this, not in daylight, not in glory, but in exhaustion. Two species, too tired to fight, deciding that warmth was worth more than pride. You breathe in, and the air smells of wet fur and smoke. You can almost feel the rough hide against your cheek, the steady thump of another heartbeat near yours. Some anthropologists suggest that the first steps toward domesticating wolves began with shared nights like this, long winters where humans and canines kept each other alive. You feed the fire, they keep watch. You offer bones, they warn of approaching danger. Bit by bit, survival turns into trust. It's oddly poetic. You, an early wanderer, might have been the first person to realize that safety doesn't always come from strength. Sometimes, it comes from company. Of course, it wasn't all cuddles and friendship bracelets. There must have been moments when things went wrong, when a hungry wolf lunged instead of lying down, or when a hunter woke to find his best blanket chewed into oblivion. But enough nights went right for the relationship to stick. And from those uneasy truces came the ancestors of every dog that now sleeps at the foot of your modern bed. Dreaming of ancient fires. You smile at the thought. The same creatures that now chase tennis balls and beg for snacks once hunted mammoths beside us. Then curled up by our sides to share warmth. Talk about a career shift. The bond went beyond wolves. Reindeer herders in the Arctic learned to sleep near their herds, using animal bodies as windbreaks. Nomadic tribes piled furs from bison, bears, or musk oxen around their shelters, layering warmth like armor. Even domesticated goats and sheep, when humans finally got around to taming them, became living heaters. Pressed close during blizzards. It sounds primitive, but honestly, who wouldn't want a woolly space heater that makes breakfast possible later? You laugh quietly to yourself. Maybe humanity's first invention wasn't fire or tools, it was realizing that friendship could be warm. The wilderness had no mercy. But it did have patterns. The more you lived in it, the more you learned to adapt, like choosing which side of the animal to sleep on. Because the fur held more heat there. Or how to position yourself in a circle, so that everyone's body heat overlapped like a living fortress. Anthropologists call this thermoregulatory behavior. You'd call it not freezing to death. And yet, there's something beautiful about it. Imagine a frozen night 10,000 years ago, a small group of humans. A few half-tamed wolves. Everyone pressed together under shared hides. Outside, the snow falls soundlessly. Inside, Breath mingles in clouds that glow orange against the fading embers. It's quiet, safe, not because the cold has relented, but because life has learned how to huddle. You might think that kind of intimacy would make people soft. But it didn't. It made them stronger. Those who shared warmth, shared survival. Those who isolated themselves often vanished into the cold. Maybe that's the oldest human lesson of all. Together, we endure. Alone, we become frost. Historians still debate exactly when this relationship began. Some point to fossil evidence of wolf bones found near human campsites. Others to shared burial sites where dogs were laid beside their humans. Was it companionship, or just practical partnership? No one really knows. But you can feel it even now. Sitting in your warm room centuries later. Your pet snoring somewhere nearby. That invisible thread of warmth still stretches across time. You picture it one last time. A prehistoric night so quiet you can hear the snow settle. So cold that your breath freezes mid-air. You reach out to feed the fire. And the wolf beside you lifts its head, blinking slowly, then rests it back down near your feet. That simple gesture, trust, feels like the beginning of civilization itself. Outside, the wind screams. Inside, there's only the soft rhythm of shared sleep, the steady hum of survival. And just before you drift off, you realize something. Even in the harshest wilderness, the most human act wasn't hunting or building, it was sharing warmth with something wild. The night deepens. The wind outside sighs like an ancient voice, brushing across stone and snow. You're still there, inside the cave now. It's damp, dark, and full of echoes. Every breath seems to bounce back to you, as if the walls themselves are whispering, "Welcome to humanity's first bedroom, the cave." The entrance is half covered with branches and animal hides. Smoke drifts lazily from a small fire pit near the wall, curling into the cracks of the ceiling like a spirit trying to escape. The air is thick with the scent of soot, earth, and wet fur. You can hear the slow drip of melting ice somewhere in the darkness. It's not exactly luxury, but to your ancestors, this was the Ritz. You shuffle closer to the wall, lying down on a makeshift bed of moss and dry leaves. It's lumpy, itchy, and alive with the occasional bug that doesn't understand personal space. Still, it beats the howling cold outside. You tug an animal hide over your shoulders and exhale, watching your breath turn to mist. Caves were the first real shelters where humans could truly rest. No flapping tent skins, no collapsing snow piles, just rock. Timeless and solid, but they came with their own problems. Cold air pooled in the lower parts, and smoke clung to the ceilings. One wrong fire placement and the whole clan could wake up coughing. Eyes burning, heads pounding. Early people learned to build small vents, sometimes just cracks, to let the smoke escape. A prehistoric HVAC system, minus the comfort. And those echoes, oh, those echoes. Imagine hearing your baby cry. And the sound repeats itself in the dark, as if the mountain is crying back, or your laughter bouncing off the walls in ghostly harmony. No wonder caves became sacred spaces. The acoustics alone must have felt supernatural. Some archaeologists believe people began to associate caves with the womb of the earth, warm, protective, and alive. The drawings that still decorate cave walls today, bison, deer, horses, weren't just art. They were prayers, Maybe someone drew them before lying down, asking for safety through the long, cold night. As you breathe slower, your senses sharpen. You notice the faint flicker of light reflecting off a wall drawing, a line of red ochre forming the outline of an animal. Maybe someone painted it hours before sleep, by firelight, using a stick and animal fat mixed with pigment. The art must have glowed in the dark like a living dream. And when they fell asleep, the last thing they saw wasn't just a wall, it was their hope. Their story, frozen in color. You close your eyes, listening. Somewhere deeper in the cave, water drips rhythmically, like the ticking of an ancient clock. Outside, the storm rages. Inside, it's quiet, almost too quiet. That kind of silence can make your heart beat louder. Your mind drift to strange places. You start to wonder if the shadows moving at the edge of the firelight are really shadows at all. Maybe that's where the first bedtime stories came from. Someone, half awake, whispering tales about spirits that guard the cave or beasts that roam outside. You imagine the storyteller, an elder with soot-darkened hands, murmuring to the children curled up nearby, "If you hear footsteps in the night, don't be afraid. It's just the mountain checking we're still alive." Comfort and terror, wrapped in the same sentence. And yet, for all its eeriness, the cave offered something that no open campfire ever could: peace. For the first time, humans could let the wind pass without feeling it. They could sleep through a storm and wake up dry. They could store food in cool corners, protect babies from frost, even carve niches for small lamps made of bone and oil. Each invention, each adaptation, was another step toward civilization. You shift slightly in your imaginary bed of moss. The ground is cold but solid. The firelight flickers against the walls, revealing faint handprints, small ones. Maybe a child's. The thought hits you softly. Someone long ago pressed their palm here, leaving proof that they existed, that they survived another winter. Their mark remains, thousands of years later, while their body and voice are long gone. The cave remembers, even when no one else does. Modern archaeologists still debate what these ancient dwellers dreamed of. Did they imagine spring? Did they dream of the hunt, the chase, the warmth of sunlight on their skin? Or were their dreams haunted by the roar of predators outside? No one knows. But we do know they slept surrounded by their art, their tools, their families, and perhaps that made the darkness feel less infinite. You chuckle softly to yourself, imagining how a prehistoric good-night routine might go. Instead of brushing teeth, someone pokes the fire to life. Instead of locking doors, they roll a boulder to cover the entrance. And instead of lullabies, they hum low, wordless tones that echo into the walls, half song, half spell. Outside, the snow falls endlessly. Inside, time slows. The world narrows to firelight. Breathing, heartbeat. You listen to the stone's silence until even that feels warm. The cave becomes more than shelter, it becomes memory itself, holding you safe in its ancient arms. You curl deeper under your imagined hide blanket, feeling the faint warmth from the embers. Somewhere beyond the cave, wolves howl again, but now their voices sound distant, almost musical. The echoes answer, rising and fading like a lullaby sung by the earth itself. Sleep comes softly. The last thing you see is your shadow on the wall, your ancient self frozen between the light of fire and the depth of stone. The storm outside has passed. You wake slowly. The fire little more than a smoldering ghost. A thread of smoke curling toward the dawn. The cave that once felt like a fortress now seems small and suffocating. You stretch, bones stiff from cold stone. And for the first time in a long, long age, you step out into something new, something softer, woven, and deliberate. The world has changed. Civilization has begun to stitch itself together. Quite literally. This is the age of wool and wisdom. You walk across a high, wind-swept hill where shepherds huddle against the morning chill. Around them graze flocks of sheep, shaggy and resilient, their breath rising like steam in the frozen air. Their bleats echo across the valley, a music of survival. You watch one shepherd shear a sheep, his knife moving with care. Wool falls like snow to the ground, soft and pale. For centuries, humans had hunted and scraped, wrapping themselves in hides that still smelled of the wild. But wool was different. It was human-made warmth, a symbol of control. It could be washed, spun, dyed, and shaped. It didn't rot or stiffen. It wasn't just survival, it was comfort. And maybe even a hint of vanity. You picture a woman sitting beside a hearth, spinning wool into thread by hand, her fingers working with the patience of centuries. She hums a song that only those who have endured the cold can understand. Nearby, children play on a floor lined with animal skins, wrapped in crude but cozy cloaks. The smell of lanolin clings to everything, a faint sweetness mixed with smoke. Some historians believe that the domestication of sheep was one of the most revolutionary steps in the human battle against winter. The simple act of spinning and weaving turned survival into a craft. A woven blanket could mean the difference between freezing and waking. And once humans learned to weave, they never stopped. You run your hands through the imagined fabric. It's rough but familiar. Warmth trapped in threads. Knowledge wrapped in fiber. The first true technology of sleep. And oh, how people slept. In small wooden huts or stone cottages. Families would crowd together beneath wool blankets, layering them like walls against the frost. The beds were little more than straw mattresses stuffed into wooden frames. Every creak, every draft was part of the nightly symphony. And if you were poor, which most people were, you didn't sleep alone. Sharing beds was normal, even polite. Warmth was a communal affair. You might roll over in the dark and find yourself face to face with your cousin, your neighbor, or the family goat. Privacy was a concept reserved for warmer centuries. There's a funny sort of tenderness in it, though, the idea that every night, people literally wove themselves into the same patchwork of life, wool, skin, breath, and dreams all tangled together. You can almost hear it, the collective sigh of a dozen sleepers, breathing in unison, keeping the cold at bay. The shepherds knew better than anyone that winter could devour the careless. They'd sleep beside their sheep in simple shelters, using the animals' warmth to survive the night. Even the great thinkers of later ages couldn't resist the wisdom of wool. Roman historians wrote about tribes who wrapped themselves in thick sheepskins, mocking them at first, then quietly admitting that, actually, they looked pretty warm. By the Middle Ages, wool had become power. Entire economies revolved around it. In England, even the Speaker of Parliament sat on a woolsack, a literal cushion of wool, to remind everyone that warmth built empires. You might smile at that, imagining kings and merchants arguing over trade routes while secretly rubbing their cold feet together under the table. The hum of the spinning wheel, the rhythm of weaving, the steady bleating of sheep in distant fields, all became part of humanity's lullaby. Even now, when you pull a blanket over yourself, you're part of that same ritual. The texture may have changed, the dyes more colorful, but the purpose is identical: to trick winter into leaving you alone for one more night. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine being one of those shepherds, lying under a sky full of stars, the earth frozen solid beneath you, the sheep press close, their warmth steady and alive. You listen to their breathing, to the faraway howl of a wolf. You know you should be afraid, but you're not. The fire flickers faintly. Your wool cloak smells of smoke and lanolin, and the stars look like pinholes in the world's dark blanket. The connection between human and animal, between craft and comfort, feels almost spiritual. You realize something beautiful. We didn't just conquer winter by fighting it. We befriended it, one fleece at a time. Historians still argue about where exactly the first wool garments were woven. Anatolia? Mesopotamia? Maybe the highlands of Central Asia? It doesn't matter. The story is the same everywhere. People looked at the cold, looked at their sheep, and said, "We can work something out." You smile at that thought, rolling the idea around like a soft ball of yarn. It's both humble and brilliant, the perfect human compromise between cleverness and necessity. The night falls again in your mind. You imagine lying beneath a wool blanket for the first time, feeling its gentle weight press you into sleep. The fire outside dims. The cold lingers at the edges of the room, but it can't quite reach you. For the first time, you dream not of survival, but of comfort. The world hums softly around you, the heartbeat of the flock, the sigh of the spinning wheel, the whisper of wool brushing against skin. It's the sound of civilization knitting itself together in the dark. And somewhere in that half-dream, you realize, warmth isn't just a condition. It's a craft, an art, a promise that no matter how cold the wilderness becomes, humanity will always find a way to sleep. The wool fades, the hearth light dims, and now the cold sharpens into something fierce. You feel the bite of salt on the wind, the crunch of snow under boots, the weight of fur and iron. Welcome to the North, the land of the Vikings, where even sleep felt like a battle. The air here never really softens. It gnaws at your nose, seeps through leather boots, and freezes your eyelashes into tiny spears. You tug your cloak tighter and step inside a longhouse. Smoke hangs heavy beneath the rafters, and the scent of pine tar, wet wool, and roasted meat fills the air. This is home for the night, a wooden hall shared by families. Warriors, children, and animals alike. The walls creak in the wind. The fire sputters, and somewhere a drunk sailor snores like a dying bear. Yet somehow, it's cozy. Vikings weren't just raiders, they were survivalists. They understood that winter could kill faster than any sword. Inside the longhouse, sleeping was a communal act. Wooden benches lined the walls, piled high with hay and covered in wool or reindeer skins. The fire pit ran down the center, its glow turning faces gold and shadows black. You find a spot near the fire, sliding under a heavy fur. The floor still leaks cold from below. But the radiant heat above makes your eyelids droop. Around you, people murmur in Old Norse, telling stories that dance between history and myth. One man recounts the saga of a sea king who froze at the edge of the world. Another jokes that the gods invented ale just to survive the northern nights. Laughter ripples through the hall, warm as the fire itself. There's something about Viking humor, it's brutal and oddly comforting. When death and frost are constants, you learn to make them punchlines. You can almost hear someone tease. At least if you die in your sleep. You'll wake up in Valhalla, breakfast included. You grin at the thought. Then shiver as the wind howls outside, rattling the shutters. The woman next to you tosses a log into the fire, sending sparks swirling up into the smoky air. Children curl up against their parents. A dog sighs and rolls closer to the warmth. Everyone sleeps in layers, clothes, blankets, body heat. Privacy, once again, is a luxury no one can afford. But here's the thing. Vikings were not merely tough, they were practical artists of endurance. Their sleeping habits were calculated for survival. Archaeological evidence from Viking Age sites shows that they used moss and straw stuffed into cloth sacks as primitive mattresses. The hay was changed regularly to avoid pests, though. Let's be honest, regularly might have meant once a season if no one itches too loudly. Even their architecture helped them sleep. Longhouses were designed to trap heat, their thick turf roofs acting as natural insulation. Some homes had raised platforms above the hearth, where the warmest air collected, basically ancient bunk beds for those lucky enough to climb them. You, however, are stuck on the floor, sharing your blanket with a snoring fisherman who dreams loudly of herring. Still, despite the noise and the smell, there's comfort here. The rhythm of crackling fire and breathing bodies syncs together, creating a soundscape that feels like safety. The Vikings might have fought like demons during the day, but at night, they slept like people who'd earned their rest. And yet, not all nights were this peaceful. Out on voyages, on ships rocking through frozen seas, Viking sailors had to sleep on damp planks beneath wool cloaks stiff with salt. Imagine that. Lying on wood slick with seawater. Your fingers numb, your beard coated in ice. The stars spinning above as if mocking your misery. You close your eyes, and even your dreams feel cold. But they adapted. They always did. They learned to wrap themselves in layers, linen undergarments, wool tunics, fur cloaks, and to share heat beneath tarred canvas shelters. They even burned oil lamps aboard ships. A dangerous but necessary luxury. If fire was too risky, they relied on the warmth of each other's bodies and the endless rhythm of rowing to keep blood moving. Historians still argue about whether Vikings actually slept much during their long expeditions. Some suggest they practiced short, rotational rests, napping in shifts while others rowed. Others think they used a kind of trance rest, half awake, half dreaming, listening to the waves as lullabies and warnings alike. You can almost see it, a lone sailor, wrapped in furs, eyes closed but never quite asleep. The northern lights shimmering above like curtains of cold fire. The sea groans, the oars creak, and somewhere, someone hums a low, wordless tune. Maybe that's what kept them alive, the ability to find beauty in exhaustion. And here's a secret. Even Vikings loved their comfort when they could find it. Saga records mention the use of heated stones wrapped in cloth, primitive hot water bottles, to warm their beds. Imagine that. Warriors who crossed oceans still clutching a warm rock to fall asleep. The gods must have laughed. You lie there, drifting between past and present, the sound of the wind blending with the soft murmur of voices. The fire burns low, and the longhouse breathes, yes, breathes, with you. For a moment, you understand how these people endured centuries of winter without losing their warmth. Their humor, their humanity. The North doesn't forgive weakness, but it rewards endurance, and as you finally drift into sleep, surrounded by ghosts of laughter, fur, and firelight, you feel something ancient settle in your chest. The peace that comes from knowing that every human before you has fought the same cold, and won. Simply by closing their eyes. The roar of northern winds fades into a solemn hush. The clinking of mugs and the laughter of warriors dissolve, replaced by the low toll of a bell. It's midnight, and the fire that once danced wildly in Viking halls now burns quietly inside a monastery, a fragile flame against the vast chill of medieval faith. You're there, in a world of stone and silence. The air smells of wax and damp stone, of old wood soaked in centuries of cold. You pull your cloak tighter, though the wool can't quite stop the chill that seeps through your bones. This is no feast hall. This is the house of God. And apparently, God keeps it very, very cold. The monastery is built high on a hill, where the wind cuts sharper than any blade. Snow piles against the heavy wooden doors, and frost webs the stained glass windows, turning the saints' faces ghostly. Inside, rows of monks shuffle through the corridors, their sandals slapping softly on the stone floors. Their breath drifts in pale clouds, as if their prayers have taken form. They move toward the chapel, clutching candles that flicker wildly. It's the matins hour, the midnight prayer, and no one is allowed to stay asleep when the bell calls. You follow them into the dim hall, where a few torches sputter along the walls. The chanting begins, low, rhythmic, endless. The sound doesn't warm the air, but it warms something deeper. When the prayers finally end, the monks retreat in silence. No laughter, no small talk, just the shuffle of fabric and the creak of old wood. They return to their cells, tiny, narrow rooms with straw beds and thin wool blankets. The walls are cold to the touch, and the only heat comes from the faint memory of the candles still burning in the chapel. You sit on the edge of one of those straw beds, and the silence presses in like a weight. The mattress smells faintly of hay and smoke. The blanket is scratchy, but it's all they have. The monk beside you kneels in prayer, his breath fogging in front of his bowed head. When he lies down, he doesn't sprawl out, he folds his arms over his chest, as if already practicing for the tomb. Sleep, here, is not indulgence, it's a discipline. Monks are taught to rest lightly, to be ready when the bell calls again for lauds before dawn. They sleep in their robes, fully dressed, because modesty matters more than comfort. If they shiver, they whisper psalms. If they wake, they pray. It's a strange kind of peace, a peace built on endurance. You try to close your eyes, but the cold creeps in. Your fingers ache, your nose stings. You pull the blanket tighter, feeling the rough wool scrape against your skin. Somewhere in the darkness, a candle gutters out. For a moment, There's only the sound of breathing, a dozen soft, steady exhales that sound almost like sighs of surrender. And yet, you can't help but admire it. This isn't the wild defiance of Vikings or the clever warmth of shepherds. This is faith turned into frost resistance. To them, sleep is not escape, it's surrender to divine order. A reminder that even rest must obey rhythm. Some historians still debate just how much sleep medieval monks actually got. Records suggest they practiced biphasic sleep, 2 separate sleep sessions, divided by those long midnight prayers. First sleep before matins, second sleep after. The idea of one continuous 8-hour rest was unheard of. Maybe that's why they wrote so much theology. They were always half awake and existential. You chuckle quietly at that thought, earning a disapproving glare from the imaginary abbot. You whisper an apology and try to look devout. The truth is, you can't imagine this level of discipline. No pillows, no feather duvets, just straw and self-control. The monks of Cluny, Canterbury, and countless other abbeys endured winters so bitter that ink froze in their inkwells and water turned to ice inside the wash basins. Yet they never stopped praying. Sometimes, to fight the chill, monks would sleep near the kitchens or scriptoriums, where the residual warmth of the day lingered. Others wore nightcaps, simple linen hoods that covered their heads in bed. A fashion that would later spread to nobles and peasants alike. And yes, those floppy bedtime hats you see in old Christmas illustrations? You can thank medieval monks for those. There's a faint humor in imagining these holy men, solemn and stoic, shuffling around at midnight wearing matching pajamas of faith. But make no mistake, their devotion was deadly serious. The chill wasn't an inconvenience, it was a test. Every shiver, every breath of frost was an offering. You lie down again, eyes tracing the cracks in the ceiling. The wind outside wails like a ghost in confession. Somewhere, a bell tolls again, 3 slow notes that echo through the halls. Through the centuries, you realize that even here, in this place of stone and silence, warmth isn't gone, it's just invisible. It burns in faith, in patience, in the quiet endurance of men who believed that frost was as holy as fire. As you drift toward sleep, you imagine the prayers of 1,000 monks rising like mist, forming a blanket across the centuries. You feel it settle over you, light as breath, warm as belief. And just before you surrender to that cold, peaceful dream, a final thought lingers. Maybe it wasn't the fire or the wool that kept humanity alive through winter, it was purpose. You wake to the sound of coughing, the smell of wood smoke, and the faint creak of straw beneath you. Gone are the stone walls and the chants of monks. Now, the world around you is small, rough, and full of life, if by life, you also mean chickens, fleas, and the occasional rat. Welcome to the peasant hut. It's winter in medieval Europe, and the countryside is frozen solid. Outside, the fields are gray and lifeless, the rivers stiff with ice. Inside, however, the air is thick, warm from the hearth, smoky from the fire, and alive with every smell imaginable: stew, sweat, hay, and humanity. You take a deep breath and instantly regret it. The hut is barely large enough for one family, but it holds 5 people, a goat, and a hen that insists on sleeping on the roof beam. The floor is packed dirt, scattered with straw that's meant to keep it dry but mostly just collects everything that falls on it. In the corner, a fire burns low, its smoke escaping through a hole in the roof. That hole also lets the snow drift in. Efficiency at its finest. You're not sleeping alone tonight, no one does. The family shares one large bed, built from planks and covered with straw and old wool blankets. The parents lie on the inside, the children and livestock at the edges. The fire provides some heat, but the real warmth comes from the press of bodies. It's less of a bed and more of a biological furnace. At first, you think it sounds cozy. Then you remember that medieval peasants bathed once or twice a year, on special occasions. The air grows fragrant. But you adjust, as everyone does. After a few minutes, the heat and exhaustion dull your senses. And you start to feel a strange sort of comfort. The world outside is brutal. But here, under this patchwork of blankets and breathing, there's life. In the faint light of the fire, you see the mother pull her youngest child closer, tucking him beneath her arm. The father shifts, muttering something about needing to stoke the fire before dawn. Someone's foot presses against your leg, bare, cold, and entirely unbothered by personal boundaries. This is what survival looks like. Historians estimate that most peasants in medieval Europe spent nearly half the year sleeping in communal warmth. It wasn't just tradition, it was necessity. Firewood was scarce, homes were drafty, and insulation was whatever nature provided. Families learned to conserve heat through closeness. They even coined phrases for it. In some regions of France, sleeping together for warmth was called faire un touche, to make a pile. And the pile worked. Beneath the layers of straw, wool, and humanity, temperatures could climb several degrees above the icy air outside. The downside? You also shared your dreams with a few thousand fleas. Medieval records mention entire households waking at night to hunt the itch, turning bedtime into a team sport. You smile at the absurdity, imagining someone whispering, "Don't move, I almost got it," while the rest of the family groans. It's gross, yes, but oddly endearing. You realize that comfort isn't about luxury. It's about shared misery made bearable by laughter. Some households, especially in colder regions, slept in box beds, wooden enclosures built into the wall with sliding doors that trapped heat. You can picture it now. A peasant couple crawling into their little wooden cocoon, pulling the doors shut like a coffin. It was claustrophobic, smoky, and dark, but surprisingly warm. And if you wanted privacy? Forget it. The box bed was usually shared with children or even guests. Even the animals got their share of warmth. Goats and pigs often slept inside the same hut, their body heat adding a few extra degrees to the air. It sounds strange today, but when the temperature outside was below freezing, a pig in the room was better than any fireplace. Somewhere, a modern landlord just fainted. Yet, amidst all this chaos, there's something profoundly human about it. The peasants didn't see sleeping together as embarrassing, it was simply life. The same fire that cooked their stew dried their clothes and lit their prayers. The same bed held their laughter, their dreams, their warmth, and their weariness. And when morning came, frost on the windows and breath fogging in the air, they'd rise, shake the straw from their hair, and start again. Some historians still debate whether this constant closeness made medieval people more communal or just more resigned. Did they feel comforted by togetherness or trapped by it? The records are silent, but when you think about it, when you imagine lying there, surrounded by the rhythm of slow, sleepy breathing, you realize that the answer might not matter. They survived. You close your eyes, imagining that flicker of firelight reflecting off the rough beams above. You can hear the crackle of wood, the soft snore of a child, the sigh of a cow settling for the night. The warmth is imperfect, the comfort uneven, but it's enough. And just before you drift off, you find yourself smiling. The peasants might have slept in filth, but they also slept in fellowship. Maybe, in a way, that's cleaner than the lonely comfort of modern beds. The steppe fades to white. The horizon vanishes into endless snow. And the air grows so sharp it feels like it could carve you in half. There are no trees, no grass, no landmarks, just a vast, frozen silence that swallows sound and breath alike. This is the Arctic, and tonight, you'll sleep in a house made of snow. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? Snow, the very thing that kills you elsewhere, is here your protector. You crouch low, ducking through a narrow tunnel of packed ice, and crawl into a space that glows faintly blue. The air changes immediately. The biting wind disappears, replaced by a muffled quiet so complete it feels sacred. You're inside an igloo, the most elegant paradox humanity ever invented. The walls curve around you, perfectly smooth. Each block of snow locks into place like a puzzle, holding firm against the weight of the storm outside. A small oil lamp flickers in the center. Fueled by seal fat, its flame dances, steady and golden, turning the icy dome into a cathedral of light. You sit cross-legged on a bed of caribou hides, so thick and soft it almost feels like memory foam, if memory foam smelled faintly of fish and ocean wind. You can hear faint laughter outside. A man and woman finish sealing the tunnel entrance with a block of snow. Inside, the temperature begins to rise, not to tropical comfort, but enough to melt the edge of fear. Soon, it's just below freezing, which, in these conditions, feels luxurious. The walls glisten with tiny droplets that freeze again as they form, a self-healing shelter. The Inuit didn't just build homes, they built miracles of thermal physics. The family gathers close. The parents speak softly in Inuktitut, their words rhythmic and calm, like waves under ice. A child curls up beside them, wrapped in fur. The dog lies nearby, chin on paws, eyes half closed. The flame hums quietly, and the snow glows faintly gold where its light touches. You realize you've never seen warmth look so cold, or cold look so gentle. In this world, survival is a conversation with nature, not a fight. The Inuit learned that snow, when shaped properly, is a better insulator than wood or stone. The trapped air in the snow blocks keeps heat inside, while the rounded shape prevents the wind from finding purchase. Even the sleeping platforms are raised, because warm air rises, and every breath of heat counts. When it's time to sleep, everyone lies together under thick blankets of seal and caribou skin. The hides are layered so that the fur faces inward, trapping body heat. The air grows still. Outside, the storm may howl for hours. But inside, it's calm, a pocket of silence in a universe of wind. You close your eyes and imagine the feeling, the softness of fur against your cheek, the smell of oil smoke, the distant crackle of shifting ice. You can almost taste the air, dry, pure, sharp with salt. Sleep doesn't come quickly here, it arrives gradually, like ice melting. And yet, this isn't just about comfort. For the Inuit, warmth is community, cooperation, and faith. You can't build an igloo alone. You can't survive a blizzard without trust. Even the act of sleeping, sharing breath, sharing body heat, is a declaration of unity. Out here, you don't just live together. You survive together. Some historians describe the Inuits' nightly rituals in almost poetic terms. Before bed, families would tell stories, legends of the sea, the moon, and the northern lights. Children drifted off listening to tales of spirits who painted the sky with color, or hunters who followed stars to the edge of the world. The glow of the oil lamp flickered across their faces like ghostly auroras. Imagine falling asleep with that kind of mythology wrapped around you. You shift slightly, imagining the curve of the ceiling above. Every breath you exhale turns to mist and fades into the blue air. The snow catches the light in soft halos. You realize that this dome of ice, temporary, fragile, melting by morning, is still one of the safest places on Earth. It defies logic, and maybe that's why it works. Some anthropologists have even measured the acoustics inside an igloo. The sound doesn't echo, it absorbs. Voices soften. Every whisper sounds intimate. Every laugh seems shared. The structure itself encourages calm. It's like sleeping inside silence. You smile faintly, realizing that for thousands of years, people have rested this way, wrapped in furs, encased in snow, listening to storms scream outside and thinking, "We're safe here. The world could end a few meters away, and still, inside this dome, there's peace." As the oil lamp dims, the ceiling turns darker, the glow fading to pale blue. The air cools again, crisp but still bearable. You pull the hide closer around you, breathing slowly. Outside, the dogs shift, their chains clinking softly. The snow settles, the wind quiets. In the stillness, you feel the heartbeat of the Arctic itself, slow, ancient, eternal, and for one small, perfect moment, you understand why these people could sleep in the coldest place on Earth and still dream of warmth. The snow dissolves into smoke, and the quiet hum of the Arctic gives way to the restless sigh of wind through pine. You open your eyes to find yourself in a vast wilderness, a frozen forest stretching beyond sight. All gray bark and silver frost. The air smells of sap, wood smoke, and solitude. Somewhere far off, a wolf calls. You're in North America now. A few centuries ago, the world belongs to trappers, hunters, and frontiersmen. Those stubborn souls who ventured into the wild with little more than a rifle, a hatchet, and a stubborn refusal to freeze to death. Tonight, you'll sleep as they did, under the canopy of pines, with snow for walls and embers for company. The man beside you, let's call him the trapper, moves with slow precision. Every motion counts. He's spent the day checking traps, skinning beavers, hauling meat. Now he's carving a hollow into the snow, building what looks like a shallow grave but will soon be a shelter. He lines the bottom with evergreen branches, layering them until the ground no longer steals warmth. Then he stacks logs to make a small frame, covers it with hides, and sets a fire at the entrance. The flames flare, painting his face in gold and shadow. He doesn't smile, he's too tired for that. But there's a quiet satisfaction in his eyes, the same kind you feel when you know you've earned another night alive. You lie down beside the fire, feeling its warmth seep through the cold air like slow honey. The stars above are impossibly bright, scattered across a black sky that seems closer than ever. You pull a fur blanket over yourself and breathe in the scent of smoke, pine, and wet leather. The sound of the fire popping becomes your lullaby. There's no bed here, no walls, no comfort beyond what you make yourself. The wilderness doesn't care whether you're noble or nameless, it treats everyone equally cold. But the trappers learned to work with it, not against it. They slept beside fires that burned all night, feeding them with logs as thick as their legs. Sometimes they dug reflector pits, holes lined with rocks that absorbed heat from the fire, radiating it back through the night. Primitive, maybe. Brilliant, definitely. You imagine the rhythm of it: wake, add wood, doze off, wake again. The cycle repeats until dawn. Sleep comes in fragments, shallow but enough. When you stir, you see sparks drifting upward, tiny orange stars joining their real counterparts above. It's hypnotic, almost holy. You hear movement behind you, a horse shifting its weight, its breath steaming in the cold. The animal sleeps standing, its warmth rising like mist. Nearby, a pile of pelts waits to be carried to some distant trading post. The world here is quiet except for the occasional creak of ice or the whisper of wind sliding between trees. Even the night feels cautious, as if afraid to wake the cold. Frontiersmen slept lightly. Every crack in the woods could mean a falling branch or a hungry bear. They kept their rifles close, their knives closer. Some slept with one arm around their gear, one eye open, and one ear tuned to the forest's whispers. Still, even surrounded by danger, they found peace in the rhythm of survival. There's an intimacy in this kind of solitude. When you sleep under open sky, every sound feels personal: the sigh of wind, the hiss of snow falling into flame, the creak of frozen trees. You start to sense the pulse of the land itself. Slow and indifferent, it doesn't care if you wake. It doesn't care if you dream. You're just another creature curled up against its skin. You turn toward the fire, feeling its warmth fade at the edges. The trapper beside you grunts softly, turning in his sleep. His beard glistens with frost. You can tell he's dreaming, his eyes twitch behind closed lids. Maybe replaying hunts, storms, or the warm glow of a cabin that's still weeks away. And yes, sometimes they had cabins, small, lonely ones built from pine and desperation. Inside, a stone hearth would glow, and the air would smell of smoke and salted meat. The beds were rough planks covered with animal hides. Mice might scurry in the corners. But even that was comforting. It meant you weren't the only thing alive. Historians say these trappers often talked to themselves, or to the fire, or to their horses. Anything to keep the silence from swallowing them. You can't blame them. Nights like this can make you feel both infinite and invisible. You watch as the fire dwindles, the last flame curling into darkness. The sky shifts from black to deep blue, the stars blurring as your eyes grow heavy. The forest breathes, slow, endless, unbothered. Somewhere, the trapper mumbles in his sleep, maybe dreaming of a warmer world, or maybe just counting the fires he's survived. You pull your blanket tighter, the fur brushing against your face. It smells of the earth, of everything that came before you. And as sleep finally takes you, you realize the strange truth of these men. They didn't conquer the wilderness, they negotiated with it. Night after night, every ember that didn't die before dawn was a small victory. Every breath that turned to mist and then disappeared was proof that they'd made it through another winter's bargain. The forest sighs again, and the wind carries your dreams away, into the dark, into the snow, into the quiet company of those who learned to sleep with the wild. The forest fades into silence. Smoke gives way to gunpowder. The faint crackle of fire becomes the distant boom of cannon. When you open your eyes, the snow isn't peaceful anymore, it's battlefield snow, stained with mud, soot, and the echoes of commands shouted into frozen wind. You're in the company of soldiers now. Different eras, same misery. From Napoleon's doomed march into Russia to the endless trenches of World War I, humanity's wars have always found a way to collide with winter. And when night fell on those battlefields, men didn't sleep, they collapsed. The cold is a presence here, heavier than armor. It bites through coats, through blankets, through skin. You imagine yourself as one of them, huddled beside a dying fire in a shallow pit dug from frozen earth. Around you, figures lie still under rough gray blankets, indistinguishable from the snowdrifts. Some snore softly, some don't move at all. The air smells of wet wool, smoke, and fear. You can feel your breath freezing against the scarf tied around your face. Somewhere in the dark, a comrade mutters in his sleep, something about home, or bread, or warmth. His words vanish into the wind. Napoleon's soldiers called it the White Death. In the retreat from Moscow in 1812, temperatures plunged below -30 degrees Celsius. Men froze where they stood. Their rifles stuck to their hands. They tore pages from prayer books to wrap around their feet. Diaries from survivors describe lying down, just for a moment, only to wake surrounded by silence and snow-covered bodies. You picture that moment, the half-sleep between exhaustion and eternity. A soldier staring into a tiny fire, his eyelids too heavy to stay open. The snow muffling everything, the screams, the gunfire, even the heartbeat. He drifts off thinking it's rest, not realizing it's the end. There's something terrifying and beautiful about it. Winter offering mercy disguised as sleep. Move forward a century and the story repeats. World War I trenches, flooded, frozen, rank with mud and decay. Soldiers tried to sleep wedged between sandbags, boots half submerged in icy water. Blankets were rare, fires forbidden. They huddled together for warmth, bodies pressed tight under damp greatcoats. Lice crawled across seams. Frostbite claimed toes. Rats learned that sleeping soldiers didn't always wake up. And yet, there were moments of peace. A tin mug of tea passed hand to hand. The dull glow of a cigarette shielding one's face from wind. Two men sharing the same small patch of earth. Shoulders touching, breath mingling in the dark. Even here, warmth was shared, not found. You can almost hear the whispers of history blending together. Roman legions camping under sleet. Revolutionary soldiers wrapping themselves in newspapers. World War II infantry huddled beneath their tanks. Different centuries. Same lullaby. Wind. Gunfire. Breath. Silence. You lie down in the imaginary trench. The earth cold and damp beneath you. The sky above is a torn cloth of gray. A few dying stars barely visible. The man next to you shifts, handing you a piece of his blanket without a word. You take it. No one talks about kindness in war. But sometimes it's the only thing that keeps people alive. Humor helped too. Soldiers joked that the army issued 3 things in abundance: cold, lice, and bad coffee. A grim laugh was better than none. You can almost imagine someone muttering, "At least the enemy's bullets are warmer than this weather." The men around him chuckle, then fall quiet again, their laughter carried away by the wind. Historians still debate how armies managed sleep under such conditions. Some accounts speak of rotational rest, where men took turns half sleeping while others stood guard. Others describe combat naps, 20 minutes stolen between shellings, deep enough for the mind to forget the cold. A few soldiers later claimed they stopped feeling it altogether, that the body simply gave up registering the cold after enough nights. You look around, and every shadow seems alive. Helmets glint faintly in the moonlight. Rifles lean against trench walls like old companions. The firelight from distant artillery flashes across the horizon, casting everything in brief, terrible beauty. For a moment, you understand. Winter isn't just an enemy, it's a witness. It watches every generation make the same mistake, and it records it in frost and bone. You close your eyes, hearing the soft murmur of sleep among the soldiers. It's not peaceful, not really, but it's honest. In this place, rest isn't comfort, it's surrender, temporary and precious. And yet, in the stillness, there's something like grace. The fire of human endurance flickers, small but unyielding. The wind shifts. Snow begins to fall again, covering footprints, rifles, dreams. You feel your heartbeat slow to match the rhythm of history itself, steady, stubborn, alive. And before the darkness takes you, you realize something simple, almost sacred. Through centuries of war, frost, and fear, humanity has never forgotten how to fall asleep. Even when the world burned, people still dreamed. The thunder of war softens into the low rumble of crowds. The sharp crack of rifles becomes the rhythmic beat of hammers. You're no longer in a trench. You're in a city reborn from its own ashes, where smoke rises not from gunfire but from the fires of change. It's the age of revolution, and the nights are just as cold as ever. The year doesn't matter exactly. Paris, Philadelphia, Petrograd, pick your uprising. Every one of them had the same problem. Idealism doesn't keep you warm. You're standing in a narrow alley behind a barricade made of overturned carts and barrels. Snow has piled on top, turning defiance into sculpture. Around you, people whisper and shiver, wrapped in coats that have seen better days. The smell of bread, gunpowder, and damp wool hangs in the air. Someone pours weak coffee into tin cups, and everyone pretends it's enough. When the fighting pauses, you find a corner to rest. A pile of rags, a broken crate, maybe an abandoned doorway. There's no bed, but there's exhaustion, and that's enough. You lie down, pull your threadbare coat over your shoulders, and close your eyes. Revolutionaries learned to sleep anywhere, under bridges, In barns, on stone floors that smelled of smoke and spilled wine. Blankets were a luxury. Newspapers were the real currency of warmth. You'd wrap them around your legs, your chest, your head. They crinkled with every breath, reminding you that liberty had a strange sound at night. Someone near you hums a song, the kind sung softly so the soldiers won't hear. It's a lullaby and a battle cry at once. The fire beside you crackles weakly. Just embers now. You stretch your hands toward it and smile at the absurdity of it all. Fighting for a better world while trying not to freeze to death in the current one. Historians still debate what those revolutions were truly about: freedom, hunger, pride, but they all agree on one thing: winter was everyone's enemy. In 1917 Russia, workers slept on factory floors wrapped in sacks. The air so cold that ink froze before it could dry. In 1789 Paris, men and women barricaded themselves in half-collapsed houses, sleeping beside makeshift fires that burned furniture, books, anything that would catch. You can almost smell the pages of history itself turning to ash. You shift under your imaginary coat, hearing the distant echo of marching boots. The night feels both endless and fragile. You think about how these people must have felt, caught between terror and hope. Too tired to stay awake but too afraid to sleep. And yet, they did, because even revolutions need rest. There's a strange beauty to it, the shared quiet between storms. The way whispers replace speeches. The way firelight softens faces that, by morning, will shout again. You pictured two rebels leaning against a wall, passing a cigarette between them. If we win, one mutters, "I'm getting a real blanket." The other laughs softly. If we lose, he says, "You'll need it even more." The fire pops. Snowflakes drift through a gap in the roof and vanish in the heat. You think of the countless nameless people who slept this way, freezing, starving, dreaming, and realize that revolutions are built as much on exhaustion as on courage. Even the great minds of change weren't spared. There are letters from the French Revolution describing delegates falling asleep at their desks, their ink smearing into pools. American revolutionaries wrote about huddling around dying campfires, boots stiff with frost, promising themselves that liberty was worth the blisters. Hope itself became a kind of insulation. You close your eyes, and for a moment you feel it, the pulse of history beneath the cold. The promise that this misery isn't forever. That somewhere beyond the snow and slogans lies a morning where you wake not to frostbite, but to freedom. The wind slips through the alley, fluttering the edges of a torn poster on the wall. The face on it, whoever he was, looks heroic in the firelight. You wonder if he ever got a full night's sleep. Probably not. Nobody changing the world ever does. Still, the rhythm of breathing around you, slow, human, stubborn, feels like progress. Even in the heart of revolution, the oldest dream endures: to close your eyes and wake up somewhere warmer. Better. The snow outside keeps falling. The fire fades to red. You pull the paper tighter around your shoulders. The headlines brushing your cheek like whispers from the future. The words are blurred, but you can almost read them. It was worth it. The roar of revolution fades into the polite hush of civilization. The smell of smoke and sweat gives way to coal and perfume. You open your eyes to the flicker of a candle behind frosted glass. the gentle tick of a clock, and the soft hiss of steam in the pipes. Welcome to the 19th century, where warmth has finally become a science, and sleep a luxury to be designed. You're in a Victorian bedroom, somewhere in London, maybe Edinburgh, or perhaps a country estate tucked beneath fog and frost. The room glows amber in the lamplight. The walls are papered with flowers that will never bloom in this cold, damp climate. Heavy drapes smother the windows, thick enough to block both drafts and daylight. The fire in the hearth burns low, a controlled ember of progress. You step closer to the bed. It's massive, 4 posters carved from mahogany, hung with curtains to trap warmth. The mattress is deep, stuffed with horsehair and feathers. There's a small mountain of blankets piled on top, wool, quilted cotton, perhaps even silk, and there, resting proudly near the footboard, lies a copper bed warmer, a shallow pan with a long handle, once filled with hot coals to preheat the sheets before bedtime. Humanity has officially upgraded from survival to comfort. You slip under the covers, and the bed swallows you whole. The weight of the blankets presses you into stillness, like being gently buried in warmth. The air smells faintly of tallow candles, lavender sachets, and the faint metallic tang of coal smoke drifting through the house. Outside, snow drifts quietly through gaslight streets. Inside, it's the kind of warmth that feels earned. Victorians were obsessed with the art of sleeping well. Doctors wrote pamphlets on proper bedroom ventilation and the moral importance of rest. Furniture makers designed ornate bedsteads with elaborate canopies to trap heat, while servants rushed to fill ceramic hot water bottles each night. For the wealthy, sleep was ritual. For the poor, it remained endurance. Because beyond these velvet-draped walls, in the narrow alleys and soot-stained tenements, warmth was still a dream. Families in London's East End huddled under thin quilts, heating bricks in the oven and tucking them under their feet. Some burned old furniture or coal dust to keep the chill away. The same city that built comfort also perfected contrast. You lie still, listening. Somewhere below, the faint rattle of carriage wheels echoes across cobblestone. Upstairs, a housemaid moves quietly, tending to fires that must never go out. In the next room, a child's cough breaks the calm, another ghost of the damp Victorian winter. It's a different kind of wilderness now. Made of fog, not frost. You shift beneath the weight of the covers. The firelight flickers across the ceiling, painting the room in gentle gold. For the first time in this long journey through centuries, you feel something close to modern sleep, clean, deliberate, layered with comfort. Yet even here, warmth comes with worry. The coal that keeps your hearth glowing also blackens the lungs of those who mine it. The steam pipes that hum softly through the house will one day become symbols of industry's cruelty. Still, in this moment, it's peaceful. You imagine a woman sitting at her vanity, brushing her hair by candlelight before bed, or a man reading by the hearth. Pipe smoke curling through the lamplight. They yawn, stretch, pull the bed curtains closed. The world outside may be changing faster than ever. But here, within these few square feet, time stands still. Historians write that Victorians often slept in pairs of sleep, an echo of medieval biphasic patterns. They'd rest for several hours, wake briefly around midnight, read or pray, then drift back to sleep until dawn. Some claimed it was the healthiest way to rest. Others simply accepted it as habit. You wonder how many dreams were written into those midnight hours. How many secrets whispered in half-sleep behind brocade curtains. You close your eyes. The warmth is heavy but pleasant. The kind that seeps through your bones. You think about how far humanity has come. From sleeping beside wolves to sleeping beside water bottles. Yet the ritual remains the same. Find warmth. Hold it close. Hope it lasts till morning. The fire crackles softly. The house sighs. Outside, the city is silent except for the distant sound of a clock striking 3. You pull the blankets tighter, letting the darkness fold around you like velvet. And just before you drift off, a strange thought flickers through your mind. No matter how civilized the world becomes, sleep still feels ancient. The same surrender, the same need, the same soft bargain with the night. The wind rattles the window pane, gentle but insistent. You whisper to yourself, tomorrow will be warmer, knowing it's a lie and not minding. The polished mahogany fades to rough pine. Perfume turns to smoke. The hush of a Victorian bedroom gives way to the lonely creak of a wooden cabin standing against the wind. You blink, and the world feels younger again, simpler, harsher, more honest. You're in 19th century North America now. At the edge of the frontier. Where warmth is measured not in comfort but in survival. The air inside the cabin smells of sap, ashes, and hope. Logs snap and sigh in the fireplace, sending sparks spiraling up the chimney. Every sound feels close, the scrape of a chair, the hiss of the fire, the faint howl of wolves somewhere deep in the forest. You pull a quilt around your shoulders, patched and faded but still heavy with the scent of wood smoke and time. Outside, the world is endless. Snow piles knee-high against the door. The trees bend under its weight, their branches glittering like glass in the moonlight. The stars seem brighter here, sharper, as if the night sky itself were frozen solid. You can almost feel the silence pressing against the cabin walls. Frontier life wasn't poetic. The people who lived here, homesteaders, settlers, dreamers chasing a better life, fought the cold the way their ancestors had for thousands of years, with fire, fur, and stubbornness. They slept in one-room cabins built by hand, chinks between the logs stuffed with moss and clay to keep out the wind. The floors were bare earth or splintered planks. The furniture was whatever they could make before the first freeze. You look around. There's a small iron stove in the corner, glowing faintly red. A kettle hums softly on top, and the air smells faintly of cornmeal and coffee. Beside the fire sits a man sharpening a hatchet, his wife mending a shirt with fingers stiff from cold. 2 children are already asleep on a trundle bed, nothing more than straw and old blankets, but their faces are calm. Safe. When it's finally time for rest, the couple bank the fire, raking coals under a layer of ash to keep them alive until morning. Then they crawl into bed, a simple wooden frame draped with quilts and pelts. The warmth is uneven, one side burns, the other freezes, but they pull closer, creating a small world of breath and body heat. You can almost hear the small noises of their night, the faint rustle of blankets, the crackle of cooling logs, the sigh of the wind finding every crack it can. It's not comfort, exactly, but it's peace. Frontier families learned dozens of tricks for sleeping through the winter. Heated stones wrapped in rags were placed at the foot of the bed. Rag rugs were hung on walls to stop drafts. Children slept 2 or 3 to a bed, wrapped together like bundles of laundry. Sometimes they even kept a loaf of bread near the hearth overnight, not for breakfast, but to test if the fire had gone out. If the bread froze, they knew they'd wake to a cold stove and a long morning. There's humor in that, in the quiet resilience. Someone must have joked that the fire's too proud to work nights. Someone else probably answered, so am I. Human warmth, after all, was the only renewable resource guaranteed to last until spring. You lie down on the rough bed now, the quilt heavy across your chest. The firelight flickers along the ceiling beams, painting long shadows that sway gently like branches. The cabin creaks with every gust, as if breathing. The sound isn't frightening, it's comforting, like the heartbeat of a wooden giant keeping you company through the dark. Historians say that frontier settlers often slept little during winter. The nights were long, the chores relentless. Someone always had to rise before dawn to stoke the fire, melt snow for water, and feed the animals. Sleep was something you borrowed, not owned, but when it came deep. Exhaustion was its own lullaby. You think of those families now, scattered across the wilderness, tiny dots of firelight glowing in an ocean of snow. Each cabin a small defiance against the cold. Each sleeper a quiet miracle. They didn't have much, no insulation, no luxury, no guarantees, but they had warmth, earned by hand. You close your eyes, the floor creaks again, and the wind moans outside. Low and steady, you can almost feel the rhythm of the frontier, the pulse of work, the patience of waiting, the comfort of firelight on tired faces. Somewhere beyond the forest, wolves call again. This time, you don't shiver. The sound feels familiar, like an old story you've already survived. You drift towards sleep with the taste of smoke in your throat and the sound of the wind in your ears. For a moment, you understand why so many people stayed, why they endured winters that seemed endless. It wasn't just the dream of land or freedom, it was this. The quiet, the safety, the warmth of a fire that's yours alone. The flames dim, and the cabin sighs. You breathe out once, slow and soft, and let the cold world outside disappear. The cabin's fire fades into white breath and blinding light. The scent of wood smoke vanishes, replaced by air so clean it almost hurts to breathe. You open your eyes, and there is no forest, no shelter, only an endless plain of ice, stretching in every direction beneath a pale, unmoving sun. Welcome to the top of the world. You're standing on a frozen sea, the wind biting so hard it feels personal. The ice groans underfoot, alive with hidden cracks. Around you, the camp of an Arctic expedition huddles against the horizon, a few tents half buried in snow, sledges piled high, and a flag that flaps weakly in the polar wind. Here, warmth is a rumor and sleep is an act of defiance. The explorers move slowly, wrapped in furs and canvas so thick they look more beast than man. Their faces are rimmed with frost, their eyelashes white. When they speak, the words crystallize mid-air before falling away. The day's labor, hauling sledges, measuring ice, pretending not to be afraid, ends with the same nightly ritual, the fight for warmth. You crawl into one of their tents. The air inside is barely better than outside. But at least the wind has stopped clawing at your face. The canvas walls snap and flutter, thin as paper between you and the void. On the floor lies a mound of sleeping bags made from reindeer hide. Fur turned inward. The explorers climb in one by one. Boots still frozen, bodies stiff with exhaustion. They lie close, shoulder to shoulder, as if daring the cold to come for them all at once. The warmth of one body makes little difference. But together, they create a fragile miracle, a bubble of heat in a world made of death. You can hear their breathing settle into rhythm, slow and uneven, as if even dreams must move carefully here. Somewhere outside, the dogs whine, curling into tight balls beside the sleds. You lie still, wrapped in fur and fear. The fabric of your sleeping bag creaks as frost forms on its outer layers. Each exhale turns to vapor, freezing instantly along the canvas ceiling. The tent sparkles faintly, as if you're sleeping inside a snow globe that someone forgot to shake. The Arctic explorers learned quickly that comfort was impossible, but survival was negotiable. They'd melt snow in tin pots to drink, rub their hands with whale oil to prevent frostbite, and sleep in layers so thick it took minutes just to roll over. The smallest mistake, wet socks, an open flap, a fire left untended, could mean the end by morning. And yet, they still dreamed. Diaries recovered from doomed expeditions are filled with quiet longing, dreams of green hills, warm beds, the sound of rain instead of wind. Some even wrote about the strange beauty of sleeping under the aurora, the way the skies shimmered green and violet above their tents, as if the heavens themselves were trying to comfort them. You lift your head and peek outside. The northern lights ripple silently across the black horizon, 1,000 curtains of color waving in the dark. The ice glows faintly beneath them, cold fire on frozen earth. For a moment, you forget the danger. It's too beautiful to fear. You imagine how those explorers must have felt, awed, terrified, proud. They weren't just sleeping on ice. They were sleeping at the edge of human possibility. Every night survived was a victory. Every morning a second chance. Some historians still debate why they did it: glory, science, obsession. But one thing is certain: they slept not for rest, but to gather enough strength to suffer again tomorrow. The body demanded it, even when the soul was ready to give up. You shift inside your imagined sleeping bag. The cold presses against you, intimate and infinite. Your heartbeat sounds loud in the stillness. The canvas flaps once, twice, and the wind whispers through the seams like a ghost. You feel the weight of everything: ice, history, exhaustion. But then, slowly, your breathing sinks with the others. The tent fills with warmth, not much, but enough. Outside, the aurora fades. The stars sharpen again. The temperature drops so low it feels like the air itself could shatter. And still, inside this tiny circle of life, people sleep. They dream of fires that never go out, of home, of sunlight on skin. You close your eyes and let the cold become background noise, a steady hum that reminds you that you're still alive. When morning comes, the explorers will rise, faces pale and lips cracked, to another day of ice and silence. They'll joke through chattering teeth, calling it a refreshing nap. Humans have always been terrible at admitting pain, but remarkable at surviving it. You exhale. A thin cloud that freezes before it reaches the roof. The sound of the ice shifting beneath you becomes a lullaby, ancient and deep. And as you finally drift towards sleep, you think, we've crossed oceans, tamed fire, built empires, and yet, the act of sleeping in the cold still humbles us. It reminds us that, for all our inventions, the night will always belong to the elements. The wind moans once more, and the world goes white again. The frozen sea fades. The white glare of ice softens into gold sunlight shimmering off snow-covered peaks. You open your eyes to thin air and ringing silence, the kind of silence that feels alive. You're standing in the Himalayas now, where the world ends in sky and prayer. Far below, the valleys lie buried under clouds. Up here, only the wind moves freely, sweeping ribbons of snow from the ridges. Nestled among cliffs and stone steps is a monastery, its walls painted red and ochre, its roofs trimmed with fluttering flags that snap like tiny hearts in the wind. You step inside, and the cold follows you like a polite guest. The air smells of juniper smoke and butter lamps. Monks move quietly through the halls, wrapped in saffron and crimson robes that rustle like dry leaves. Their heads are shaved, their faces calm, their breath steady even in the thin air. No fire burns in their sleeping quarters, there's no wood to spare. And no need, they've learned another way to keep warm. Tonight, you'll sleep as they do. Your cell is small, just a stone alcove with a thin mat and a folded wool blanket. The floor is cold enough to ache, but the silence makes up for it. You sit cross-legged, feeling the stillness settle around you like another layer of cloth. A single candle flickers on a ledge, its flame bending in the faint draft. A bell rings somewhere deeper in the monastery, and the chanting begins. The sound moves through the corridors like a river, low, rhythmic, endless. It vibrates in your chest more than it reaches your ears. The monks chant mantras as the light fades, each syllable a tiny spark against the cold. Then, when the night finally takes hold, they stop. One by one, they retreat to their cells. The air drops to freezing. You can see your breath, but they do not shiver. Instead, they sit quietly, eyes half closed, and begin to breathe in a different rhythm, the ancient Tibetan practice called tumo. You follow their lead. Slow inhale, slow exhale. The breath moves deep into the belly, coiling like a small ember. At first, nothing happens. Then, gradually, warmth begins to spread. It's subtle, a pulse in the spine, a glow behind the ribs. The monks have trained their minds to control their body heat, to turn focus into fire. Science calls it thermogenesis, they call it meditation. You close your eyes, and the warmth grows, not like a hearth or a blanket, more like a sunrise inside your skin. The air remains cold, but it doesn't matter anymore. You realize the monks weren't trying to escape the cold, they were learning to live with it, to understand it, to balance it. When you open your eyes, the room looks different. The candle burns steady. Frost sparkles faintly on the stone walls. But you no longer feel its sting. You lie down on the mat, wrapping yourself lightly in the thin blanket. Around you, the chanting has quieted into silence. The only sound is the wind brushing past the walls and the soft hum of your own breath. Historians and scientists who visited these monasteries in the 20th century wrote in awe of what they saw. monks meditating bare-chested in the snow, melting the ice around them with nothing but focus and breath. Some doubted, others measured. All agreed, the human body, guided by the mind, could outwit even Himalayan winter. You think of all the nights before, fires, furs, huts, castles, and realize that this is something entirely different. The warmth here doesn't come from outside. It's not borrowed or stolen. It's made from stillness. The monks believe that sleep, too, is a kind of meditation. They drift off slowly, never fighting rest but never fully surrendering. The body sleeps, but the mind remains aware, breathing in rhythm with the mountain itself. You try to do the same, inhale, exhale, steady. The world narrows to a single point of calm. Outside, the wind rises again, howling across the cliffs. Snow whirls through the air like white incense. Yet inside the monastery, the sound is distant, softened by centuries of prayer. The walls seem to breathe with you, exhaling warmth each time the wind strikes. You smile faintly in the dark. The monks here don't conquer the cold. They welcome it. They turn it into a teacher. You imagine one of them whispering, "The cold reminds us that warmth is real." Your eyelids grow heavy. The candle burns low. The flame steady as a heartbeat. You can feel your pulse slow to match the rhythm of the chant still echoing somewhere far below. Breath, silence, warmth. And just before you drift into that thin, luminous sleep, you understand what centuries of winter have been teaching all along. That true warmth has never been a matter of weather, but of will. The candle flickers once, then steadies. Outside, dawn glows faintly beyond the peaks. You exhale one last time, and the breath lingers in the cold air like smoke from an inner fire. The monastery fades into mist, and the hum of chanting dissolves into a soft electronic buzz. You open your eyes, and the mountains are gone. In their place, nylon, aluminum, and synthetic fabric. You're lying in a modern sleeping bag, the kind advertised as Arctic-rated and scientifically optimized for comfort. The world has changed again, but winter hasn't. You're somewhere deep in the wilderness. Perhaps Alaska, maybe the Alps. A sleek, ultralight tent surrounds you, fluttering gently in the night wind. The glow from your headlamp fades as its battery dies. You're alone, zipped into a cocoon of technology, humanity's latest promise that it can outsmart the cold. You can hear your own breath inside the tent, warm and rhythmic, condensation beads along the nylon walls, freezing into tiny crystals that glitter faintly when the moonlight hits them. The air smells faintly of plastic, snow, and that strange metallic scent that cold leaves behind. You're wrapped in synthetic insulation that can supposedly keep you alive at -30 degrees Celsius. The sleeping pad beneath you reflects heat, and the tent fabric is designed to trap warmth while resisting wind. Science has turned survival into design. And yet, as your toes start to tingle and your breath fogs your sleeping bag's hood, you realize it's still cold. Outside, snow crunches faintly, maybe an animal, maybe just the wind rearranging your footprints. You listen, heart rate quickening, then smile at your own nerves. Humans have come a long way from caves and furs. But we still sleep with one ear open in the dark. You shift, trying to find a comfortable position. The sleeping bag sighs as the fabric adjusts. It's warm enough, but not cozy. There's a difference. Cozy belongs to fires and laughter and the sound of another heartbeat nearby. This is solitude. Modern survival gear doesn't just block the cold, it isolates you from the world entirely. You're safe, but alone. You check your watch, digital. Glowing faint blue. It's 3 a.m. The tent groans softly as wind brushes against it. You think about how far we've come. From sleeping beside wolves to zipping ourselves into engineered cocoons. From instinct to insulation. From company to convenience. Still, there's something admirable in the design. Your sleeping bag was built by people who studied heat transfer, body temperature regulation, the conductivity of air. They've created miracles of fabric and math. You're lying in the result of centuries of trial and error. Each thread a descendant of wool, fur, and firelight. Historians of technology like to point out that even in the age of satellites and smartphones, the basic problem of sleeping warm hasn't changed. We're still chasing the same feeling our ancestors did, that soft, invisible balance between body heat and the chill beyond. The difference now is that we've outsourced the work to polymers and zippers. You close your eyes, trying to relax. The sleeping bag rustles softly, like whispering leaves. The air is still except for the faint hum of your own blood in your ears. Outside, the wilderness sleeps too. Maybe a fox curls beneath a tree. Maybe an owl watches from a branch. You wonder if they ever feel comfortable, or if that's just a word humans invented to make peace with our own fragility. Your thoughts drift. You remember the stories that came before: fires, caves, wool, monasteries. You realize that every generation has believed it finally mastered the cold. And every winter proved them wrong. No matter how advanced the gear, the night still wins eventually. The body still needs warmth. The mind still craves another heartbeat nearby. But even here, wrapped in nylon and silence, there's beauty. You unzip the tent just a little and peer outside. The snow glows under moonlight, endless and unbroken. The sky is full of stars, sharp and cold, the same ones that watched over Vikings, monks, peasants, and hunters. The same constellations, the same night, the same longing. You pull the zipper closed again and smile into the dark. Humanity has built skyscrapers and rockets. But the real miracle is simpler: we still sleep in the wild. Chasing the same fragile warmth that began with a spark in a cave. You shift once more, your breath steady now. The cold is still there, but it feels less like an enemy and more like a companion. The tent hums softly with the wind, and your heart slows to match its rhythm. Tomorrow, you'll pack up your gear, follow a GPS instead of the stars, and tell yourself you've conquered nature. But tonight, in this quiet patch of wilderness, you know better. The wilderness isn't conquered, it's shared. Your eyelids grow heavy. The nylon crackles faintly as frost forms along the seams. You breathe, and the air fogs then fades. The warmth you've made stays close, loyal. It doesn't care if it came from fur or fabric. And just before you drift off, you whisper something your ancestors might have said under different skies, in different tongues. Let the fire last until morning. Outside, the snow keeps falling. Inside, you sleep, modern, fragile, timeless. The nylon softens. The frost at the seams melts away. You open your eyes, and the tent has become something else. a blur of every shelter you've ever known. The fabric turns to fur, then to wool, then to stone. A flicker of firelight passes across your vision, and for a moment you can hear everything at once: the crackle of ancient flames, the hum of monastic chants, the sigh of Arctic wind. All the centuries are breathing together. You are no longer in one time, or one place. You're everywhere that people ever tried to sleep through the cold. The air is neither freezing nor warm. It's the perfect in-between, the calm breath between seasons. You look around, and the world feels familiar, as if all the fires, caves, yurts, and beds have folded into one vast, eternal room. Every invention, every story, every heartbeat that fought against the dark still echoes here. In one corner, a cave flickers with ochre light. The shadow of a hunter turns slowly on the wall. Nearby, a Viking curls beside his shield. A monk whispers a final prayer. A peasant child tugs the blanket closer to her mother's side. Across from them, a trapper dreams beside his fire. A nomad hums under a felt tent. An explorer lies still beneath frozen stars. And beyond them all, a modern traveler exhales softly into the nylon dark. Each breath drifts upward, merging into one shared warmth, the oldest language humanity ever spoke. You sit quietly, feeling it surround you. For thousands of years, people have asked the same question: how do we stay warm in a cold world? And every answer, fire, fur, faith, friendship, has been the same story told in different forms. It's not really about temperature. It's about belonging. You think of how, even now, you sleep best when someone else's breathing fills the silence. How a flickering light, whether candle or screen, still calms you. How your body remembers the patterns of ancient survival even when your mind forgets. Outside this dream space, the world still turns cold each year. Somewhere, snow falls on a city window. Somewhere else, a campfire burns beneath the stars. But in this moment, you realize warmth was never something humans found, it's something they made. Not just from wood or wool, but from each other. Historians can trace the evolution of sleep, chart the progress of comfort, map the rise of technology, but they can't measure this: the invisible bond that connects you to everyone who ever lay down and closed their eyes against the dark. You breathe slowly, deeply. The firelight shifts again, flickering through centuries. Every shelter, every generation, fades gently into mist. The cave walls, the woolen blankets, the stone monasteries, the wooden cabins, all of it dissolves until there's only the rhythm of your own breath. You smile faintly, realizing that warmth has never been about conquering the cold. It's been about trusting that you'll wake up again, that dawn will come, that the world will still be here waiting. Outside, the wind has stopped. The sky, whether night or morning, you can't tell, glows softly, like the embers of a dying fire. You lie back, feeling the centuries settle around you like a blanket. The earth itself seems to sigh. You think about every person who's ever slept through a storm, every soul who's shared a bed, a fire, a laugh. You think of how fragile it all is, and how that fragility makes it beautiful. Your breathing slows. The cold becomes distant, harmless, something you can finally let go of. Somewhere far away, a bird calls. You can't tell if it's the beginning of day or the end of a dream. The last warmth of the fire touches your skin. Gentle as a hand, you close your eyes and whisper to the darkness that's never really been your enemy. We made it. The flames dim, the wind hushes, the centuries fall silent. And as your thoughts drift into that soft, endless dark, the story fades into the same quiet that carried it from the beginning. End of script. Sweet dreams.